Level 1. The Script Kiddie. Almost everyone who starts down this path gets caught, sooner or later, not because they're stupid, not because they lack real intelligence, because they don't actually understand the weapon they're pointing at someone. You download a tool from a stranger on a forum you barely trust. You have no real idea what it's doing under the hood. You aim it at a target you picked almost at random. It works. You have absolutely no idea why it worked. For about 10 minutes straight, you feel genuinely, dangerously powerful. Then it hits you. You don't know what you just did. This is where almost every hacker's real story actually begins. Not writing code from scratch, just copying someone far smarter, running scripts other people spent real years building and understanding. Online, you start calling yourself a hacker. It feels good. Nobody who actually knows this world takes you seriously. Not yet. You slip into a small forum, but only just barely. Everyone there talks in a shorthand you can't fully follow. You lurk far more than you ever dare to post. You're quietly humiliated by how little you actually know here. That humiliation turns out to be the most useful thing you've felt. You spend hours running tools you barely understand, chasing a feeling more than any real result, and the specific gap between the confidence you project online and the actual competence you carry becomes something you start to notice on your own before anyone else points it out to you. There's a moment where a tool fails, throws an error you can't read, and the specific helplessness of not understanding your own equipment teaches you something no successful run ever could, that copying code is not the same as understanding it, and that the difference between the two is the entire distance you actually have left to travel. Level 2. The Self-Taught Coder. You stop running other people's tools and start trying to understand what they actually do, line by line, a process slower and less satisfying than the instant gratification of the Script Kiddie rank, but the only path that leads anywhere real. You teach yourself to write basic tools of your own, clumsy and inefficient compared to what real practitioners build, and the specific humility of watching your first working script do something genuinely useful, even something small, changes your relationship to this entire pursuit permanently. You spend nights reading documentation nobody assigned you, forums where actual practitioners discuss techniques you don't yet fully grasp, absorbing an entire technical vocabulary through sheer repeated exposure rather than any formal education. There's a specific project that takes you weeks longer than it should, debugging your own code line by line, and the patience required to sit with your own failure without simply copying a working solution becomes the actual skill this rank demands more than any single successful exploit. You start understanding systems well enough to see their actual weaknesses rather than just running someone else's checklist against them, a shift from executing to understanding that separates everyone who quits at this rank from everyone who eventually goes further. Your reputation, small as it is, starts to shift from someone who runs tools to someone who occasionally builds small pieces of them, a distinction that matters enormously to the few people paying close enough attention to notice. Level 3. The Gray Hat. You're skilled enough now to be genuinely dangerous, and the specific weight of that realization changes how carefully you move through every decision, because the legal ambiguity you're operating in offers no clean line between what's defensible and what isn't. You find vulnerabilities in real systems, sometimes reporting them responsibly, sometimes not entirely sure yourself which category a given action actually falls into, and the specific discipline required to think through consequences before acting becomes a skill nobody at the earlier ranks ever demanded of you. There's a moment where you discover access to something you probably shouldn't have, a genuine test of judgment rather than technical skill, and the decision you make in that moment, walk away or go further, teaches you something about your own character that no line of code ever could. You start building a reputation in specific communities, known now by a handle rather than your real name, a specific compartmentalization between your actual life and this other identity that becomes its own permanent psychological discipline. Other practitioners start reaching out, offering opportunities that blur further past whatever line you'd been holding, and the specific pressure of that blurring, gradual rather than sudden, teaches you something about how people actually end up crossing lines they never intended to cross in the first place. Level 4. The Black Hat. The specific moment you cross fully into criminal territory rarely feels as dramatic as the mythology suggests. usually just one more step past the last ambiguous one, and the weight of that realization arrives only in hindsight, once there's no longer any ambiguity left to hide inside. You start operating for real money now, real targets, real consequences if caught, and the specific paranoia this generates, checking and rechecking your own tracks, becomes a permanent operating mode rather than an occasional concern. There's an operation that goes differently than planned, a target more defended than you anticipated, and the specific composure required to disengage cleanly rather than pushing further out of frustration. Teaches you something about discipline that pure technical skill never could. You develop a specific vigilance around your own digital footprint that exceeds anything the earlier ranks demanded, understanding that a single mistake here doesn't just end an operation, it can end everything. Money starts flowing in amounts that feel genuinely disorienting against the ordinary life you're still nominally living, and the specific psychological adjustment required to hold this secret from nearly everyone around you creates a permanent isolation the earlier ranks only hinted at. Level 5, the elite operator. Your targets now are organizations most people have heard of, and the specific sophistication required to breach them, patient reconnaissance stretched over weeks rather than any single dramatic attempt, draws on every skill accumulated across every rank you've held before this one. You develop a reputation among a very small circle of people who actually understand what you're capable of, a specific currency more valuable in this world than money itself, because reputation here determines who trusts you with real opportunities. There's an operation where a single overlooked detail nearly exposes you, and the specific, methodical work required to identify and correct it before it becomes catastrophic teaches you something about precision that no earlier success ever could. You start operating with a discipline that looks almost boring from the outside, patient, careful, allergic to the kind of showmanship that gets less careful people caught, understanding that longevity here has almost nothing to do with raw skill and everything to do with restraint. Level 6, the ghost. Almost nobody knows who you actually are anymore, not other practitioners, not the organizations you've operated against. A specific anonymity so complete it becomes its own kind of achievement separate from any technical skill alone. You develop a permanent, exhausting vigilance around your own identity that exceeds even the elite operator rank, because at this level, the people looking for you are no longer amateurs, and a single mistake carries consequences that took years to fully understand. There's a moment where someone gets close, a specific investigative thread that nearly connects back to you, and the methodical, patient work required to sever that thread without drawing more attention teaches you something about the actual cost of this level of anonymity that no earlier rank fully prepared you for. You understand, at this rank, that the specific price of being this good is a permanent inability to ever fully claim credit for any of it, a loneliness the mythology around this world never mentions. Level 7, the legend. Your name or the handle attached to it gets spoken of in forums and headlines alike, a specific mythology that grows larger than the actual person behind it, exaggerated in ways you can never publicly correct. Somewhere tonight, a kid is downloading a tool from a forum, running it against a target he picked at random, absorbing the same hollow 10 minutes of feeling powerful you once felt, not knowing your name, never likely to know it, but shaped nonetheless by a mythology you helped build without ever intending to. So here is the question underneath everything this video just walked you through. Which rank are you standing in right now? Because the legend behind this name did not start there. He started downloading a tool he didn't understand, running it against a target he picked at random, and he closed that distance one script, one system, one impossible decision at a time.